Okay, I thought I would just talk a little bit about preparing the engine before we get ready to put it on. I'm waiting on a couple of parts here to finish up the electrical wiring so I can finish testing it, and then I'll put the boot cowl on. Want to make sure on the fuselage, it's kind of contradictory in the manual over which one of these to be sure and grind the powder off of, the powder coat off of on both sides. Be sure you get this side and that side, because this is where the ground, we want to ground everything through here from the engine. So I grind them both off, just get the powder coat off. This is the Lycoming engine. It is a little different from the Aerosport engine. You see I've just put it on the engine hoist by the lift ring that's here. And that way you can jack it up and kind of spin it around. I keep a bungee here. I can just spin it around where I want it and then bungee it off to where it holds it still. So the things that, the new firewall forward manual that is in Dropbox was just revised. I believe it was December of 2020. So it was just recently revised, and it's actually pretty good. There are a few errors I found in it, and we're going to address those with Cubcrafters, and so we can probably get those changes. But it's probably something you can figure out yourself, but I'll tell you about them anyway. So anyway, what I'm doing is here, while I've got it easier before I put it on the engine, I'm just getting as much stuff done as I can, so it's easier to work with. This part here, this is where it's going to be up against the aircraft, so you don't have a lot of room from the firewall there, so it's a lot easier to come in here now and put your hoses and so forth in it. So anyway, essentially, this is the fuel injected, so you've got your fuel spider here. This is what distributes the fuel, coming up from this fuel line, from the servo, the fuel servo down here. And it distributes them out to the injector nozzles that are here, okay? And so what I do is I put in, you should have, now again, I'm talking about Lycoming. The Aerosport was just a little bit different, but I install the dipstick holder in here and then safety wire it onto here. Then you come back. I go ahead and do everything I can. This is all tell you in the manual, but this is going to be the ground strap. I just attach it, remove one of these casing bolts here. This is going to be the strap. I even pull my hardware while I'm looking at the picture. This is actually going to go onto the motor mount. When it goes up here, it'll be a little tab coming off here, which you'll be sure and clear all the powder coat off of it also. And then this is going to mount to it to give you your ground. And again, then we've got it cleared off through there, so our ground's going through the fuselage also. So once we do that, then I come around back here. You're going to have to install your oil temperature thermocouple. It's just basically going to screw right into this slot here, which is in the back, right behind the oil cooler. The oil filter. This is the Vernatherm. This was installed actually by the Lycoming, so you don't have to do that, but you just check it, make sure it's tight and it's safety wired there. And this will be the wires, coming off. We'll just keep them out of the way. So this has a crush gasket, a little copper crush gasket in there. The solid side of the copper goes towards the fuel filter attachment, and then you're going to turn around and take it and get it down to where it's flush. And once it's flush touching, then turn it 180 degrees in the other direction until it's tight. So flush up towards it's kind of tight, and then 180 degrees, and you're done with that. So you don't want to just smash this in. It's not a torque value to it. That's the way they tell you to do it. And then we'll safety wire it. There's another hole over here open to safety wire it, and this is the safety wire from the Vernatherm. Okay, coming back up here, you probably already have your fittings into the engine here. So this fitting here was already into the engine. We just had to attach the hose to it right here. So this is the correct hose. This is the oil breather and the hose clamp. And it's just gonna go down here. This eventually will go into a hole that goes in between all four of the pipes. So any oil that's coming out the breather hose is actually going right onto the exhaust pipes, and it'll burn it off. Back here, this fitting should already be in here. This is going to the oil cooler that will be eventually installed, sitting right here. So I just installed it, kind of located up to where it's going to go. So when we get the oil cooler on, it'll go right there. And coming on around, on this side, same thing. This is going to the other side of the oil cooler. And this part, obviously you can see where it's painted the Lycoming silver. That was already installed. Has a 45 on it, so this hose here just attached came up, and it's ready to go into the oil cooler, which will be mounted onto the baffles when we install the baffles, so it's not there now. I went ahead and took the oil cooler and installed those fittings while I was at it. So those two fittings there, they're actually called out wrong, I think, on the manual. I think they left off the last letter. I think it's like 816D or something like that. I think they just called it 816-8. They said in the manual it's an 816-6D. So you'll probably be able to figure that out anyway. And then you'd drill those holes out with a number 9. You widen those holes out to a number 9 because later it'll make the screws that'll go down into when we mount it. Okay, so you did that on here. I came back around here. This is the mechanical fuel pump. Of course, this engine has both a mechanical and an electric backup pump. So this part right here, this was not here. This should be in your kit. This is a T. It's going right into here, and these use O-rings, and you lubricate them with a little fuel. These fittings all came with the new O-rings, but I actually had some in the kit. That's what this is right here. So little fuel O-rings. You're gonna tighten those down, they say, until it's smashed. This is, yeah, no. Okay, so what was the part that was installed on this side? They call for it in the manual for you to put it in over here. And this was just a plug in here. There's nothing in it. This adapter fitting here is actually, you won't find it in your kit because that's what is installed on this side. I forget the number, but you'll see the number it calls for to put right here. It won't be in your kit. It's actually the part you'll have to remove from this side, and you just take it and you put it on this side, okay? This is the side of the fuel pump. It's actually the inlet where it's coming in from the auxiliary fuel pump. So it'll be, the auxiliary fuel pump will be here, so it supplies fuel pressure, brings the fuel up into here. It comes over to here. Over here it tees off. This is the T that we're going to install with the O-ring. And then this bottom of this T is going down around, and this fuel line is connected to the actual fuel servo. So this side is going to the fuel servo. This side is going to come back up. It has a, be sure you look at it, it has a restrictor plug, a little restrictor piece that goes inside the part here. There's another elbow right here. Inside that elbow, the restrictor plug goes in, and then another fuel line comes up, and that's where your fuel pressure sensor transducer is going to be mounted against the firewall. And it'll be mounted to those wires that we installed separately into the pins. So anyway, I don't have that. That was missing, that fuel line and those fittings and a restrictor. So I'm waiting for this section here to come in before I finish it. But had I had it, I would have gone ahead and mounted it now. It's still not hard to get to later when it's installed, but the more you can do now, the better. You'll have to install this little 90-degree nipple, and it's going to take this line over here, which is going to be that right there, that hose. It's going to attach to this. This is an overflow. It'll go down. It'll actually end up mounting onto the side of the boot cowl. Right here, here's the boot cowl with firewall. And this is going to be the gasolator hole over here. Over there is where the fuel line coming in from the fuselage. And the gasolator is going to come through here. That line will actually come down, and it's going to have an Adele clamp right here, and it's going to go to the end. It's going to cut off. What that is, that's an overflow. We're in the event that there's two diaphragms in this mechanical pump. If one were to fail, fuel would get caught in between them. It would actually force it out this. And so if you see fuel coming out, and it just dumps it basically into that tunnel. So if you see fuel, coming out into your tunnel or whatever, then you've got a problem probably with one of these diaphragms in here not working. So anyhow, that hose will just go into here, and it'll have a small clamp, and then it'll go down and we'll cut it and trim it later to fit there. That same hose is then going to go over into another part we installed. You had to put this piece in here. There's a restrictor plug here. The fittings are called for, so there's a fitting. Then there's this little 45 nipple here. Okay, this is your manifold pressure. So that same hose the same hose there that we just talked about putting on the overflow there is going to be used, and we'll cut a section from there, and it's going to go to this part on the boot cowl here, which is the manifold pressure, which is going to hook up to this hose right here that we did when we under the boot cowl. So it goes back in here and goes back around, fuels the manifold pressure transducer. It also splits back off, goes in and feeds these lines into your light speed ignition boxes so it can see what the manifold pressures are, and it does all kinds of calculations and timing changes and all kinds of stuff, I guess, based on that. So we're using the 567 on any of the pipe threads, nothing on the other ones that are, I don't know forget what you call the ones that fit into the fuel fittings. Like these ends here, you won't need pipe thread on. When you put these on, you don't need pipe thread because this is the fuel fitting, the one that has the tapered ends. Okay, so we installed that restrictor in that piece. We also came over here. We had to take, there was a plug in here. You just take it out and get rid of that plug. See, like a plug there? There was a plug here. You take that out and you put this little fitting in. Then we're going to take this weird hose. This one right here has got two weird ends. It's going to go, one end's going to go onto there, and then the other end's going to attach to the oil pressure transducer, and that's going to mount up against the firewall up here also. The firewall you see here, there's certain things that you're going to put on before you put the blanket on the inside of the firewall, and then all the other stuff is installed through the blanket, so you have to kind of watch. So once we get that part on there, it's also with 567 because it's going in there as well. Also, like I say, you can see here, I came around and went ahead, and this part was already installed by the factory at Lycoming, and it's installed, but the fuel line you install and you bring it back down, you can see down there it goes through a area where they've got a grommet in through the baffles of the engine. It's gonna then come back down. You can see we're making sure it's staying clear of everything. Comes back down, and then I went ahead and did all the parts here at the top of the fuel servo here. These are the stack of components to go to the fuel metering device. I forget what you call it. The yeah, you know, measure the fuel. Here's the wire right here. Now the top of the fuel servo already had this piece attached. So if you look, this piece was what was actually came from the factory down in there. You take it out and remove it, and you're not going to use it. So you set it aside. And then if you look at the manual, you're going to put that piece down in there, same thing, O-ring. And then you got another adapter piece there. It goes into the cube. And then there's another piece here that comes in with a 45 with the fuel fitting on it. I went ahead and installed both of those. You can see with 567 because those are pipe threads. So I installed that one, and I installed this one, and I installed it to that one, and then just screwed it into that bottom piece. Then installed the fuel line. You just want to make when you look down through here, see how that line is clear. It's not touching any of the cylinders, and it's not going to chafe or anything. That'd be fun to throw fuel all over the hot engine. Okay. So another thing that you got to do on the Lycomings is it'll tell you, and the only place you're going to see it, and they didn't put it in the firewall forward manual, but you have to do it or your prop's not going to work. And they ship the Lycomings with a plug. This is where the prop is going to end up mounting. Flywheel go on your prop. Right here, this actually oil will flow up through this area here from the engine. This is oil. And this is what oil will come through the prop hub, and then it goes to the prop governor that you can control to turn the blades on the constant speed prop. Now, it comes with, this is the plug. You got to take the plug out because they ship it in case you had a fixed pitch prop, okay? Now, if you get the Aerosport ones, they don't. They come with the plug already out. And when you get the prop, you just want to make sure when you look in the prop hub, it should have an O-ring that's going to go in there. It should be on the prop side. So that's one of the things, if you follow my forum thread, we go over all this in a lot more detail also. But this is a beat out plug, okay? So you can see here, this plug was installed in there, and it actually keeps the oil from ever coming out this way on a fixed pitch prop. So you got to take this out. This is pretty heavy duty stuff. So when this is installed, you'll see it's kind of weird. It's kind of dome shaped in the middle. It's kind of domed out towards the front, and then it kind of slopes in, and you can see it fits right here, and it's out in the center. What you do is you take, I take a great big headed punch, steel punch that's really big on the end, and start punching the dome part. Just start hitting it with a hammer and the punch, and it'll start, as you push it in, it'll start to give away as you know. I don't know how they install those things, but obviously it's pressure against it. So when you start, and it's curved, so when you start hitting those curves, it starts moving it. So the first one I did on the first engine, this is the second Lycoming I've worked on. It was pretty easy. I gave it just not that many punches around that side, and it just came loose and fell off. And you just see, you can just reach up in here, no big deal. But this one, you can see, I beat the heck out of it. You know, I just kept on. You know, but I just kept going around the outside edge, see, and then pushed it down in there. And you'll see it loosen up, and you'll see oil starts to seep as it starts to loosen up, because as you push it away, it comes away from the edges. And you just keep beating on it until it comes out. Don't drill a hole. If you drill a hole, obviously you don't want any metal particles going into your engine. So no drills. Anything. Some people have talked about taking a small punch and going all the way through. That's awful hard material, and I'm not sure how you would do that, but it works fine. If it's not coming out, just keep beating on it, keep stretching it out to where it comes out away from the edge. Finally, I just put it down, the punch at the edge, hit it, and then it popped it out. Fell right on the floor. Okay. You see they got a mark here because the Lycoming ships the flywheels not on it, so you'll see a mark on the flywheel that shows you where to put it back on, so it's balanced up. One of the other things I do now too is I go ahead and I put the prop governor on. It'll come without it. This is what will come on there. It'll already come with the bolts and everything. Plate will be on it, and there'll be this fake gasket that holds it in there. Let me say first too, before you go knocking this plug out here, I just take that, I had about half of that full of oil in here, preservative oil. So I went ahead and took this, on one of them I had the quick drain plug was installed at the factory. This one was not. It just had a plug up in here, but it had oil in it. So I went ahead and took the plug out, let that oil drain to get out of the engine, and then I installed this. It comes with a little bit of anti-seize, and then and like a thread lubricant. I put 567 on it too. It does not have a gasket. As you can see, it does not go all the way up. So I checked with Cubcrafters. There is no gasket here. Just put the 567 thread sealer, torque it up, and then safety wire it across there. So be sure and take the oil out, or otherwise when you punch this, oil is going to come out all over you. Okay. So anyway, the oil governor, there's pretty good instructions on that. You're just going to take it out, clean it up, put a new gasket in there with the screen facing outwards. You'll see how the screen is bowed. It should face the governor. Put that back on, torque the bolts back up to like 20 foot-pounds. Then you come out here, and then you got to take these screws loosen them up, and they talk about clocking. Of course, you put this piece on. In the bag with the governor, you should have a separate bag, and in that bag you'll see a new gasket, and there's 3 longer screws here. Those are for this bracket. This is going to hold the cable that's coming through. It's going to connect to this, so you can, when you change the prop pitch. So these 3 screws here that you took out, we replaced with the longer screws and used the washers that came with it. Now, after you put your cable through here, and you'll work your cable back and forth to see how it works with the stops, this has to be adjusted. You can see the slots right in here. When it was shipped, these screws were right in the middle of these slots. You can take this whole thing and turn it. It's not easy. You got to really turn it hard. But and so left this arm over here, because as you clock this whole thing, this arm will turn too. Now, the manual says they want the arm, over here, like at this angle. Every time I've done it, I put the cable in, I sat there, I worked my prop back and forth, my cable back and forth, and I've looked at it, making sure that, you know, here obviously I'm on the stop, that's where it's going to go to full automatically to fine pitch. And then when you go like this, obviously it's going to come all the way back here. If you can see it, there's a stop right there. See, so you want to make sure when you're working your prop knob handle inside the cockpit, you want to make sure everything's working. So when you go full forward, it'll go all the way to this stop. When you come back this way, it'll go all the way to this stop. And again, this is controlling your RPMs at your high end. Now what I found is that you've got the cable coming down through here, and it's going to connect on here, and it's got a piece there. When it comes like this, I found, you can see how that is. I doubt that's going to work, because you see where the hole is, the rods are going to, the end of the cable is going to hit on this spring. So they say in the manual to clock this all the way over. Well, it won't go to where they say clock it to here. We won't clock by turning these screws. You can go as far as you can, but that's it. Okay. So what they don't tell you, and what you probably will have to do, and I'm not going to do it now, I'm just going to wait until I put the cable on. It's easy enough to do, and I'll actually move this and adjust it when I get my final installation. But this screw right here, you can take it, don't take it off, just take it out towards, it'll finally loosen up enough, and you can take this arm and put it wherever you want it. So you can you'll probably have to take this arm, move it over a little bit more. But if you go too far and you go to moving it, then it won't bottom out here. So in other words, you just want to make sure you're hitting both of your stops. Nothing's hitting the spring, but your final adjustment will be through here. Then you go ahead and safety wire these all back together in pairs, like you saw when they came with the small 20 thousandths safety wire. And I guess probably the only other thing we'll talk about is when this is the fuel servo, and this is your air intake manifold. Right here, and they'll probably have a red tag hanging down. There's this plate, and this plate is installed for some reason. They install this plate. The Aerosports won't, Lycoming does. This plate will be attached up there between this fuel servo and the air manifold. All you have to do, as you can see, is just loosen the top two bolts loose, and then take the bottom two bolts completely out. Once those are out, you don't have to take the servo off or anything. Just drop this plate out, put those two bolts back in, torque them, and then safety wire them. So that's pretty much it. So this is kind of what I had left. That came off of the governor, which we won't use. This is the plug that we knocked out. These are the 3 short screws came out of the governor. And that's that plate there, and this is the part that came out of the servo. So that's probably what you'll have that you will not reuse on the engine. And that's about it for right now. And now as soon as I get this done and the boot cowl installed, and then I'll come back, and there's 2 ways. Some they tell you can go ahead and attach the motor mounts, the mount here if you want to, here, and then install everything onto the engine at once. I've always gone ahead and installed the mount first into that, and then just brought the engine over to the mount and put it on. I haven't tried it this way, so I don't know which way is easier. The oil sticks from Lycoming are pre-marked. I'll tell you right now that they're not right. They're, well, they would be probably in a level position, but not in a 3-point. It'll always show a quart lower in a 3-point. Well, mine have so far. So I just make a note of it. So if they tell you to keep it at 5.5, quarts, then it'll show 4.5 on here. But that's something that you can test after you put your oil in the first time. But anyhow, that's all I'll talk about this, and that should get you started. I think that's the easiest way to get it ready.